Tonight, nightmare on Long Street.
Can somebody get some help for my daughter?
After the pilots notice ice on the wings, a commuter plane crashes into a house near Buffalo, New York, and explodes in flames. I'm Maggie Rodriguez. Among the 50 killed, a 9/11 widow who just last week met with President Obama.
She was an inspiration to me and to so many others.
Final congressional approval tonight for the president's economic stimulus with almost no Republican support. And what's it take to make a hero? Steve Hartman's Assignment America.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening. Katie's off tonight. Once again, something went terribly wrong aboard a commercial airliner, but there was no miracle ending, not this time. Continental Connection Flight 3407, bound from Newark, New Jersey, was heading for a landing in Buffalo, New York last night when the pilots noticed, quote, significant ice buildup on the windshield and on the front edge of the wings. Moments later, this from the tower.
This aircraft was 5 miles out, and all of a sudden we have no response to that aircraft.
The twin-engine turboprop nosedived into a house on Long Street in the Buffalo suburb of Clarence Center. All 49 people on board and one in the house were killed, the first fatal crash of a commercial airliner in 2.5 years. Tonight, the flight recorders have been recovered. Jeff Glor begins our coverage from the scene. Jeff, what's the latest?
Well, Maggie, investigators tonight are beginning the very difficult process of recovering the victims' remains, and we may be getting a better sense of why this plane went down. On an ice-cold night, the flaming wreckage of Continental Flight 3407, searing images of a horrific crash in Clarence Center, New York.
Can somebody get some help for my daughter?
A neighbor recorded this dramatic video even before firefighters arrived. A woman who'd apparently escaped a burning house, frantically trying to find her family.
My husband is.
In an instant, 50 people died.
There just wasn't anything that could be done. It was a burning mass of rubble within minutes after impact.
The twin turboprop Bombardier aircraft was set to take off from Newark's Liberty Airport at 7:10 p.m. But because of high winds, it didn't leave until 9:18. It was on its way to Buffalo's Niagara International Airport, a route Continental flies 47 times a week. On its approach, there was light snow and mist, but the female first officer of Continental 3407, operated by Colgan Air, indicated no problems in seemingly routine communication with air traffic control.
Maintain 2,300 till establish localized and clear out approach runway 23.
Left 260, 2,300 till established and cleared out. 23 approach Colgan 3407.
Colgan 3407, Cascade Tower 120.5. Have a good night.
Then, silence, as the tower repeatedly tried to reach the plane.
Colgan 3407, approach. Colgan 3407, Buffalo. Colgan 3407, approach. This aircraft was 5 miles out, and all of a sudden we have no response to that aircraft.
The flight recorder revealed it was about this time the crew talked of significant ice buildup on the windshield and the leading edge of the wing, despite the de-ice switch being on. Then the plane began to pitch and roll wildly.
It was pitched, headed into the ground. There was just no time. It was too low and on too bad a trajectory in order to recover.
Carrying 5,000 pounds of fuel, the 74-seat commuter plane knifed into this quiet, sprawling suburban neighborhood 5 miles from the Buffalo airport. One man inside the only home hit, 61-year-old Douglas Walensky, died. Incredibly, his wife and daughter escaped with only minor injuries.
I could see the orange fireball, and I ran and grabbed my son. I said, something major happened.
Images from the sky show what the neighborhood looked like before and after. 12 homes were evacuated.
There were 50-foot flames.
In addition to 45 passengers, 4 crew members died, and an airline employee as well. 47-year-old Captain Marvin Renslow, 24-year-old First Officer Rebecca Lynn Shaw, and flight attendants Matilda Quintero and Donna Prisco. Investigators from the NTSB arrived early this morning, but so far officials have released limited details. Between them, the pilot and first officer had nearly 6,000 hours of flying time with this airline. Both their families said today, Maggie, they absolutely loved flying.
Jeff Glor. Thank you, Jeff. The plane that crashed was only a few months old, and before last night, that model, the Dash 8 Q400, had never had a fatal crash, which is why investigators immediately suspected weather played a role. More on that tonight from Nancy Cordes.
The fact that this flight went from calm to catastrophic in an instant has investigators focusing on a specific culprit.
The crew discussed significant ice buildup, ice on the windshield and leading edge of the wings.
Still, a readout of the plane's black boxes shows the plane was operating normally until the moment the crew deployed the wing flaps and landing gear 6 miles from the airport, increasing the drag on a plane already loaded down with ice.
Flight director shows a series of severe pitch and roll excursions within seconds.
Immediately after the plane went down, air traffic controllers, worried about the icy weather, began reaching out to nearby aircraft.
Getting any kind of icing or anything there?
It doesn't appear to be building. We got about about a quarter inch on us from the descent that has remained with us the whole time.
Ice buildup is one of a pilot's worst enemies. It sent an American Eagle flight plummeting into a field near Roselawn, Indiana in 1994, killing all 68 passengers and crew. In 1997, a thin layer of ice on the wings of a Comair flight caused the plane to stall and spiral out of control over Detroit, killing 29.
What ice does, it disrupts the airflow of the wing, and if you lose your lift on your wing, you're not flying.
But those crashes in the 90s spurred major safety advancements.
The whole aviation community has gotten smarter about this, so the airplanes are designed better and pilots are trained better.
The Dash 8 Q400 that crashed last night had heated propellers to melt the ice and inflatable devices or boots on the front edges of the wings to knock ice off. The black boxes show that the crew had turned those de-icers on earlier in the flight. The big question now is, were they working? Maggie?
Nancy Cordes, thank you, Nancy. Each of the 50 people who died on this plane left family and friends. Each had a story. Michelle Miller now on the victims of Flight 3407.
7 years after Beverly Eckert lost her husband, Sean Rooney, in the World Trade Center attacks, she lost her own life. She was flying to their hometown near Buffalo to mark her husband's 58th birthday on Sunday.
You know, my whole life ended, really, on September 11th.
After his death, Eckert became a champion for 9/11 victims.
Once she got something into her head, I knew that it was going to happen.
Just last week, Eckert, along with other 9/11 families, met with President Obama, who remembered her today.
So she was an inspiration to me and to so many others, and I pray that her family finds peace and comfort.
Law student Elise Cosner was flying home from Florida to visit her brother Chris. He described the emotional phone call he had to make to his parents.
To tell you the truth, I heard my mother make a noise on the phone that I've never heard before.
Alan Berner read a statement on behalf of Captain Marvin Renslow's family. He was among the 4 crew members on board.
They know that he did everything that he could to save as many lives as he could.
Renslow had flown 3,300 hours with Colgan Air. First Officer Rebecca Shaw was just 24 years old, yet she logged more than 2,200. Her mother said flying was her dream ever since high school.
She loved to fly. It was her passion. She just loved flying, and anytime she could be in the air, she was an amazing woman.
Also killed Allison DeForges, a 66-year-old grandmother who was the world's leading expert on the 1994 Rwandan genocide. 24-year-old Madeline Loftus, a former hockey star, headed for a reunion with her Buffalo State College teammates. And jazz musicians Jerry Nywood and Coleman Millette, members of the Chuck Mangione Band.
He was a good person, loved his family.
Tonight, a somber community gathered at a local church to remember their neighbor and those lost on Flight 3407. Michelle Miller, CBS News, New York.
And there was a scare in London tonight. A British Airways jet crash-landed and skidded on the runway after the nose gear failed. The plane had flown from Amsterdam to London City Airport, which has a very short runway. The 71 people on board evacuated safely, 4 minor injuries. Now to Washington, where Congress is giving final approval to the president's economic stimulus plan. The House approved it by a vote of 246 to 183. Every Republican voted against the plan. So did 7 Democrats. The Senate is voting right now, and it's expected to pass with the required 60 votes. Here's Chief White House correspondent Chip Reed.
To a room full of business executives, the president made one last pitch for his economic stimulus.
And the goal at the heart of this plan is to create jobs. Not just any jobs, but jobs doing the work America needs done.
A few hours later, the House passed the bill easily.
This is a remarkable achievement for President Barack Obama.
But all Republicans voted no after Republican leader John Boehner asked his members to stand firm for party unity.
But a bill that was supposed to be about jobs, jobs, jobs has turned into a bill that's all about spending, spending, and spending.
Buried inside the 1,000-page bill, Republicans argue, is a long list of so-called egregious spending, such as $198 million for Filipino veterans of World War II and $8 billion for high-speed rail, most of that money added at the last minute. Even 6 conservative Democrats voted no.
We ultimately, at some point in time, we're going to have to pay for all of this.
But most Democrats insist the bill's $500 billion in spending will create jobs in fields from construction to renewable energy, and that the $287 billion in tax cuts will encourage families to spend and businesses to invest. Leaving the White House with his family for a weekend at home in Chicago late today, the president gave a thumbs up when he was asked about the House vote. Now, the Senate vote is happening now, but that vote is being held open until later tonight when Democrat Sherrod Brown of Ohio will return from Ohio, his mother's funeral, to cast the decisive 60th vote. The president then signs it early next week. Maggie?
Chip Reed. Thank you, Chip. And this program note now, Sunday on Face the Nation, Bob Schieffer's guests include White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs. Coming up next on the CBS Evening News, Army Strong. That's how the Army sells itself. But something's leading those who sell the Army to suicide. In Iraq today, a female suicide bomber targeted women and children in the third day of attacks on Shiite pilgrims traveling to Karbala. A witness says the bomber walked into a tent, sat down, and detonated her vest. 40 women and children were killed, and more than 60 were wounded. A string of suicides by U.S. Army recruiters led to the unprecedented shutdown of every recruiting station in the country today to deal with the problem. In the past 3 years, 5 recruiters from the same command in the Houston area have taken their lives, all combat veterans of Iraq or Afghanistan. From the Pentagon, here's David Martin.
When Sergeant Larry Flores hanged himself last August, his fellow Army recruiters in Texas never saw it coming.
It was a complete shock. I took it very bad.
But that was only the beginning of Amanda Henderson's nightmare. 2 weeks later, her husband, Sergeant Patrick Henderson, called from his cell phone.
He was just hysterical, crying, screaming, and he kept saying he had the shotgun. And he said that he can't deal with it anymore. He's done. He can't deal with it anymore.
She coaxed him home and got the shotgun away from him, but he was still raving.
Saying that he sees Iraqi women and that the men will be along soon and we can get them.
Sergeants Anderson and Flores had 2 things in common. They both had served in combat and were working 70-hour weeks as Army recruiters. 6 weeks after Flores hanged himself, Henderson did the same.
He taken the dog chain and strangled himself.
An investigation blamed the plague of suicides among Texas recruiters on a toxic mix of job stress, poor leadership, and personal problems. But those suicides were only a small part of an Army-wide trend so disturbing that President Obama was told about it the first time he visited the Pentagon. Last year saw more Army suicides than any year on record. And now it's gotten worse, much worse. 24 Army suicides in the month of January, double last year's rate. More than were killed in combat that month in both Iraq and Afghanistan. It's so shocking that starting Sunday, the Army is ordering every soldier to stop what he's doing and undergo training in suicide prevention.
There's never been an Army-wide stand down for the entire Army. That's how serious we're taking this.
It will include this interactive video in which a fictional soldier sees his best buddy killed and gets a Dear John email. It addresses one of the Army's biggest problems, the stigma of admitting you can't handle it.
No, I'll pull it together, Seth. I'm fine. I'm not weak.
But the Army can't make the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan go away. And nearly 2/3 of soldiers who take their lives are either in the war zones or have been there. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Coming up next, succeeding in an ugly economy by helping people feel pretty. The president's ready to sign the stimulus to jumpstart the economy. The Treasury's rolled out a new plan to help the financial sector, and next week the president will outline a plan to help homeowners avoid foreclosure. Is anybody doing well in this recession? Matter of fact, yes. Richard Schlesinger now with one of the bright spots.
Dab it in again to the moisturizer.
Kelly Canzone knows firsthand how to put the best face on a bad economy.
That's going to take care of what we call crow's feet.
A woman can't afford to go out and buy a new suit or a new outfit or weekly therapy, but she can afford a $13 lipstick.
She sells makeup for the Mary Kay Cosmetic Company. Lots of makeup.
And how does the economy look from where you stand now?
Wonderful. My husband and I joke sometimes that there's a recession happening, but not in our house. You're going to see Mary Kay Ash's photo.
She was a full-time psychotherapist, making $60 an hour when she decided to shrink her practice and grow this business.
Mascara.
Startup cost? $100 for her first supplies.
The first thing you're going to do is you're going to pre-profile them.
She now helps train other sales ladies.
Are you making much more money?
I would say probably not quite double what I was making as a therapist, but probably about a third more.
Kelly Canzone says people in her position can make as much as 6 figures in a roughly $5.5 billion industry.
Makeup, at least affordable makeup, is taking off. At the same time the economy started tanking last year, mass market skincare sales were up 11% and grooming products were up 15%.
Which makes makeup an attractive way to make up for fading prospects in other businesses, like construction. Laura Greco is an electrician trainee struggling to make it, so she started selling makeup too.
It was just nice to see that extra, money throughout the week that can help supplement for hours that I may not be getting.
They say to look good is to feel good, and these days, when there's very little about the economy that feels good, selling cosmetics still looks good.
We do take MasterCard, Visa, American Express.
Richard Schlesinger, CBS News, Stanhope, New Jersey.
Now to the company blamed for a national salmonella outbreak. Earlier this week, Congress subpoenaed the president of the Peanut Corporation of America. But
I respectfully decline to answer your question.
Today, the Peanut Corporation declared bankruptcy. So after Stuart Parnell invoked the Fifth Amendment to avoid the third degree, the company filed for Chapter 11 on Friday the 13th.
The FDA found that you'd already shipped the product.
Finally tonight, Steve Hartman's been doing some thinking about words and what they mean and what they used to mean. Here's Assignment America.
In the TV news biz, we ruin a lot of words. When we find a word we like, we use it and misuse it over and over until just about all of its impact is ground out. One word that's become nearly meaningless in recent years is this one. And it's a shame, because this used to be such a great word.
When I was a kid, that's me, a hero was an ideal. Today, on the other hand, just about every soldier, civil servant, and six-figure athlete gets called a hero. And although some may duly be, you sure don't have to be Superman to see right through the ones that aren't.
Have you ever used steroids, human growth hormone, or any other performance-enhancing substance?
No. At the very minimum, to be a hero, I think you have to admit you took steroids before it shows up in the papers. Or, no matter how much gold you win, I think you have to retain at least an ounce of common sense.
One thing I think we learned this week is that there's a big difference between someone who has a heroic moment and someone who's a true hero.
When Captain Sullenberger landed that plane in the Hudson, that was a heroic moment. It made him the Michael Jordan of plane ditching. But the way he carried himself on 60 Minutes, that was a hero in the making.
We will be joined forever because of the events of January 15th, in our hearts and our minds. Goodbye.
As long as he doesn't start partying with Michael Phelps, I think Sully deserves the title of hero. I think he deserves to be right there among the few true, time-tested heroes who really define the word. Heroes like Wesley Autry.
These kids today, they need somebody to believe in. Train was coming in like that.
Wesley's heroic moment came 2 years ago when he jumped in front of a speeding New York City subway train to save a stranger who'd fallen on the tracks.
Wesley Autry.
Wesley was a celebrity for a while. Got a mention in President Bush's State of the Union speech. And although the fame has faded, Wesley has never forgotten the responsibility of being a hero.
Then I got my 2 daughters, whom, I love very, very much. And, I have to protect my image.
A real hero only makes news once.
Yes, you don't want to tarnish that image.
Thank you, Wesley. Looks like the word's coming back already.
Wordsmith, that's my word for Steve Hartman. And with that, we wrap up this edition of the CBS Evening News. For Katie Couric, I'm Maggie Rodriguez. Thank you for joining us. I'll see you Monday on The Early Show. Till then, have a great weekend. Hope you spend it with your Valentine. Good night.